neither of those teams actually do want to get into that lower bracket, so let's see what they can show us here in Plaguefall. Looks like both of the tanks are picking up those 2 neutral mobs there on the side, because they actually do give you trash percentage, so it's a little bit extra free percentage they gain because they don't have a lot of HP, so they can just cleave them down with that first huge pull that we see both Piami and Golden Guardians gather up there. The big giant with 2 or even 3 packs, it looks like, on top of each other there. We do see the grip coming in by Rentari and Yoda, and now they're just nuking everything down. None of the affixes is actually preventing them to do anything here, except Sanguine is something they have to be careful about, right? They want to make sure they use the Ring of Peace properly to not have any of those heals go off from those Sanguine pools.
Yeah, very nice to have access to that Death Knight as well. As mobs start to die, you can just grip a mob that might be about to heal out of it, and that's going to be something that we're going to be looking for both Death Knights on both teams to be able to do, because that'll save a tremendous amount of time if you're able to prevent some healing. As you can see, Piami, they are, wow, those are some large mushrooms.
Do they have bolstering?
It kind of looks like it, yeah. Maybe
yeah.
Those certainly look like they're bolstering. So we might have the wrong affixes between the two teams, or maybe we just are wrong about which affixes were active in this dungeon, because, I mean, those are some very, very large fungal monsters for sure. I don't think they get that large just from their own Wonder Grow ability, but maybe actually.
I mean, possible.
I thought I saw the bolstering animation play off though, but maybe I could be. No, look, they're Sanguine. So it's not bolstering. So I'm mistaken.
Oh, yeah, it's not bolstering at all. So
yeah,
it actually does have the same animation. Yeah, it's Wonder Growth. Okay, so it looks like bolstering, but it's just the same animation, I guess. Never mind us. So it is Sanguine and Quaking after all. They just had all of these Wonder Growths go off. You see an Incap as well on Piami's side here in the corner. Looks like they really do want to play a strategy. And you can see on Golden Guardian's side, I mean, look, I'm fired up. Look how big his character model is right now. He's got all of those buffs spell stolen on him. And you can see the Fungal Mancer just being Incapped there on the left side of the screen for Golden Guardians. So both of the teams trying to use this strategy, as we've talked about, with the Fungal Mancers.
Yeah, so for those who don't know exactly how this thing works, the Fungal Mancers cast this Wonder Grow on themselves, and it also buffs all the other nearby enemies as well. And it gives them a stack of this massive haste buff. But you can spell steal it, and it'll stack up on yourself as well. So you can spell steal, and managing your mana effectively, you can roll a very high amount of stacks of it for quite a long time before you're out of mana. And that's something that we're seeing mages on both sides here, really trying to optimize for as much uptime as possible. One even further perk of it is that even if the Fungal Mancer is imprisoned, is paralyzed, any of that kind of stuff, it will still cast the Wonder Grow. So you can continue to spell steal it even while it's safely, CC'd off to the side. You don't need something like Entangling Roots, which is normally something that you need for those sort of strategies where you want a mob to be casting and not in the pack. Just any CC will do. It still casts while CC'd, and you can see Golden Guardians have really used this to their advantage. They've destroyed that first boss. They are now moving on to the second area with that Fungal Mancer, walking along with them. They're going to want to CC it. Yeah, there's the Paralyze coming out just in a pretty well-planned spot, I would say, as they're now getting another big pull going while fired up, casting those Flame Strikes. I would not want to be in the other end of those Flame Strikes.
All right, so I fired up, just doing a huge amount of damage with that buff that he's been spell stealing, and that was a really huge pull. They also pulled the Spine Breaker here from the left side over onto this. They also had the Plague Borers explode. Now the Plague Borers actually have a target cap. When they explode, they debuff themselves plus 4 more random mobs. So when they do those huge pulls, it's not actually going to go on everyone, but there's nothing like bolstering, so they don't have to care about that. They're just going to do as much damage as they can with the Plague Borers, and the rest of the damage is just coming out of I'm fired up, dealing with the rest of the AoE that needs to be done, as they're dealing with this 47% Pride. Piami looking to do the exact same thing as Golden Guardians, just quite a lot slower. This first pull difference was quite huge. I mean, Golden Guardians just had this first pull done so much quicker compared to Piami.
Yeah, the mana as well is something to watch out for as well. Making sure that they're able to keep those spell steals sustained, right? And not drop those stacks, because it is a very powerful buff. As Fired Up actually under quite a bit of attack here, taking some damage here. I think even has some threat. It's going to be hard to avoid having threat when you're pumping out just this much damage. But I mean, Fired Up has killed that mob before it killed him. He is going to fall back down to earth now as those stacks drop off of him, but he might be able to start building them back up again soon. Or maybe they've decided to actually kill off that mob as part of that pull. I didn't quite see. Golden Guardians walking their way up now through this gauntlet. PI I would say about a pull, maybe a pull and a half behind where Golden Guardians are. This run is looking really, really, really good for Golden Guardians. You can see they are going to be fighting two of these tentacles at the exact same time. They have Lip off-tanking one as that Unholy Death Knight, and that's going to allow them to just keep moving up and avoid having this place take too long. They've spawned a Pride, and they're going to be able to kill this Pride and this mini-boss with the Plague Borers exploding. Because Plague Borers exploding does tremendous damage to Prides. You can watch this here. That Pride is just going to be melting as a result of that dot on it. They don't have to put any of their own damage into this Pride. It's going to be handled entirely by the Plague Borers. They have another set of 2 new Plague Borers now. Now, the question is whether they're going to be able to take these down and use them to kill another pack. And you can see the movement abilities come out instantly. They are really wanting to make sure that they can get as much of the Plague Borers to land on these extra mobs as possible. And you can see they're going to use it on the purple slime. And that's an annoying purple slime, right? The purple slime makes it so you can't do as much damage to all the other stuff. And you either have to kill it by itself after or kill it by itself before. By rushing down there, they've been able to just remove it from existence, right? With those Plague Borers. And now they can do all of the other mobs in this second boss area all at once without having to worry about that purple slime. And are they going to pull the boss as well? Is the boss in here? Oh my goodness. No, I don't.
Maybe not.
See him. No, and I think that would be a
man.
little.
I was hoping for the boss, but with Sanguine, it might be a little bit ambitious, as you might have a hard time controlling some of these mobs, especially the Spinebreaker doesn't really move.
There it
But
is.
now the boss is being pulled, so at the end of this trash bug, they are pulling Dr. Icarus on top. Curry actually going down for Piami here. They're actually having some issues. Looks like they managed to get them back up though, because they did. Looks like Shadow Melt off some of the aggro here, but the Pride, they're still in common with it. Looks like they tried to skip it, but didn't manage so. And now Kuri did manage to get Rest back up. So small mistake by Piami. But yeah, Golden Guardians so far ahead at this point, as they're already fighting Dr. Icarus, just pushing that second phase here. Let's see how they deal with the bombs, with the slime bombs. If they choose to ignore them, or if they actually are putting any sort of damage into it.
Yeah, Fired Up, just fiending for the haste buffs wherever he could find it there. He's standing in that puddle left behind when the red slimes die. It does some damage over time to you, but it also gives you a haste buff, so he was able to make use of that to get a little bit more damage out on that first platform and a little bit more cooldown recovery on the combustion, which he's deploying now. And they are just going to be cleaving down this bomb. A lot of teams have decided to let the bomb explode with barrier and other cooldowns, but Golden Guardians use that barrier instead to make that massive trash pull work, and they've instead said, you know what, we'll just kill this bomb through the use of our incredible cleave damage that we have, right? We have all of this extra damage that just does huge AoE incidentally, right? We've got these Elysian Decrees, we've got all these effects that are just going to get good value if we decide to just kill the bomb and we fight Dr. Icarus on top of it. And by doing this, we then get to move that barrier off of the bomb, and we'll see now if they try and commit to the boss and kill it prior to this bomb exploding, or if they're going to use a similar strategy on this third bomb. This one, I think, is one where if they have the damage, they might be able to just ignore the Plague Bomb, and that looks like exactly what they are doing. There's the Sigil of Misery from Yoda. That's going to keep the purple slime out of the way here. Ooh, Dr. Icarus getting a little bit close to it, but it is going to avoid breaking. They really need to make sure that this dies before that bomb explodes, because otherwise they are going to be in a lot of trouble, though.
Yeah, the cooldowns are gone at this point. The combustion already came out, so they definitely want to make sure they have enough damage to finish this off. But they have a Touch of Death available by Shakib, and they are managing to do so, as they still are on 0 deaths, 75% trash, and done with that second boss. So really well done by Golden Guardians, as they are recovering their play compared to that first dungeon. I mean, to be honest, in the first dungeon, Golden Guardians didn't really make any mistakes, right? They just had the slower strategy because they did not adapt their setup to this newly found Holy Paladin Shadow Priest composition. Outside of that, Golden Guardians played really well. And it looks like they're also playing well in this dungeon here, but this time they don't have any sort of disadvantages with their strategy. It really looks like they are doing an incredibly good job, as they're now seeing this ambusher here to start with an in-person, gathering up everything else. Maybe the ambusher is something they're going to deal with later on, or maybe they just completely skip it. That's also possible.
Yeah, I mean, 0 deaths Plaguefall is already a very impressive thing that most teams aren't able to accomplish with any degree of reliability. The fact that Golden Guardians are making this happen with the added difficulty of their strategy at the start of this dungeon, with the added difficulty of just basically never dropping combat for the first 5 or 6 minutes of the dungeon. I mean, this is a really, really impressive performance coming out from Golden Guardians. If they can keep this up, we still have 2 really tough bosses ahead of them, but they have opened up a huge lead over PIME, who are still working on that last platform of Dr. Ickes. Something like 2.5 minutes maybe at this point separate these 2 teams as Golden Guardians working on that 80% pride, and then they've really just got a boss done sequence ahead of them. Of course, though, Tyrannical, last 2 bosses of Plaguefall, not something that you can just count out ever.
Yeah, it still will be dangerous as they're now finishing off this Pride. You can see everyone dropping a little bit low as no one wants to commit those offensive cooldowns, but they should be fine as the bubble comes out by Lip as well. And I mean, yeah, just really clean play by them. One more thing to mention is that they're actually not playing any Necrolords. You see, JB is playing Night Fae to get those Fae Guardians to reduce the combustion cooldown for I'm Fired Up. And no one else actually playing that Necrolord Covenant, so they cannot use the Fleshcraft to get the haste buff from the blood slimes, but doesn't look like they even need it. I'm Fired Up, unfortunately, getting stunned here by someone else's AoE stun, unfortunately. So a little bit of a mistake, but they should be able to be fine anyway. And yeah, looks like Necrolord is just really a covenant that is not that needed in Plaguefall. Those teams just seem like they don't need or want this extra haste buff.
Yeah, I mean, you have to go a little bit out of your way to make it happen, right? You have to channel the Fleshcraft on some specific mobs, and those mobs have generally been dying in pretty intense pulls, where I'm not sure there was really time to make that happen. But, I mean, if they had a Necrolord, I'm sure they'd be using it. I think it's also a case of just that there's not really anybody in the group that, for whom if you swap them to Necrolord, the benefit is worth the loss, based on what they're currently playing, right? There are some players in the group that could play Necrolord, but if you swap your Unholy Death Knight, I think that would be a pretty common choice. Or you could swap potentially the Priest over to it, but I think Night Fae is really working out well here, especially given how important Fired Up is with all of those extra buffs he's got at the start of the dungeon. I think you want to just play to support him as much as possible. So, I mean, I think that's a really good decision, all the Covenants, and the entire way that Golden Guardian's composition is complementing their strategy here. They're making their way now. Dominant Venom Blade. It's going to die for Golden Guardians before it's even pulled for PIME. They have got a solid lead here. Wow, Dominant Venom Blade going down underneath the 12-minute and 30-second mark. I mean, this has got to be one of the runs that they. I mean, if this isn't one of their best runs that they've been able to practice here, then they've got something really incredible going on here, because this is looking so good for Golden Guardians.
All right, but now we're getting to the most dangerous part, actually, of this dungeon because of Sanguine. Because this mini-boss here actually does not move at all. So if you spawn Bile Flesh in a Sanguine pool from one of the Devoted, then you have to just completely line offside them up to be able to get him out of that Sanguine pool, or you have to wait until it despawns. So it looks like they're playing it really safe. They're not pulling all of the Devoted at the same time to basically just avoid Bile Flesh spawning in one of those Sanguine pools. It does always spawn on the furthest away Devoted mob that is active currently, so that's why you definitely want to make sure you don't have him port while one of them is low HP, otherwise you get that Sanguine, and that's really not something you want to see. But Golden Guardian's playing it perfectly, not having the mini-boss spawn in any of those pools, so no time lost at all. Well done.
Yeah, and they actually left the one Devoted mob right at the front of the room. That baited Iker to go ahead and teleport up over there. And so now they can go back over here, finish him off where there's not really any Sanguine. There's not going to be any problems as a result of that. And, there is a little bit of a Sanguine, but they're able to finish off right before the Sanguine healing would come out. They're able to then spawn the Prideful on the stairs up there, so they can use their Invis potions and get right onto the boss here. Really well thought out pathing through this room. And like you said, yeah, I mean, Sanguine is a really difficult affix to manage. Continue to put on a masterclass in this dungeon. They are getting started with the boss here, and this is just looking so good for them. Hard boss, though. This boss is not a free one by any stretch. There's a lot of damage coming out. They're going to be using stuff like the anti-magic zone, like the altar time we just saw from Fired Up. to make sure that everybody isn't going to be dying to the heavy damage that's coming out, just the unavoidable damage. Also, a lot of avoidable stuff that you have to avoid. Those tentacles are very one-shotty, and they need to be very carefully avoided, or else you're just going to die.
Yeah, one more thing that makes this boss a little bit easier is the double disease dispel that they actually have in their setup with the monk and the priest. So they can at least get rid of 2 of those stacking debuffs from the infectious rain that does a huge amount of damage to their group. And also those AoE defensive cooldowns that they have with the disc bubble and of course the DKMZ as well. And now they're popping their bloodlust for the second phase, it looks like. This boss, I think this boss is really difficult as we talked about, but if you assign your offensive cooldowns properly and you only get 1 rain per phase, then it's getting a lot easier. So that's why we do see the bloodlust being popped in the second phase, the combustion was popped in the first phase, and then again in the third phase, and they're really assigned their offensive cooldowns to be able to not have one phase last too long.
Yeah, the second phase as well, it's a tricky one because you don't have all your opener. And in the last phase, Fired Up can move while scorching, and that's a really nice way to just manage the mechanics. You just have melee and a mage in the last phase, so you don't actually have too much problems where all the mechanics are going to force you to lose damage to movement. So the second phase, I think, is a really intelligent one to overload with some extra offensive cooldowns with the Bloodlust. But I mean, they're just, this thing is looking so good for them. This boss is now 15% and falling. Golden Guardians are going to get something like a 16-minute and 15-second Plaguefall. I mean, this is an incredible run for them. It's going to put them back tied to 1-1 in the series against Piami here, and we're going to a game 3.